Good morning and welcome to Splintered Grace. I'm here with Bonnie Violet, and we're here to continue our conversation. Just a quick reminder, me personally, I'm a conservative Christian woman, and I'm having a conversation with someone that I love very much.
Hi, and I'm Bonnie Violet. I'm a transgender queer drag queen living in San Francisco, and Tina's my aunt. I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
That's awesome. So last week we kind of did our first leg, and I thought it was so awesome. So I know these things, but it doesn't really hit me until we talk about them. That I'm going through pictures last week, and we grew up literally on the same corner in the same town. We graduated from the same high school, and it's so amazing to me how all that played out. And as much we had as far as a foundation that's similar, how amazingly differently we both turned out. That just kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, definitely. I think there were times I thought we were definitely more similar, just as far as like our parents' support and that sort of thing. But then I didn't realize, I didn't think about you living on the same corner, and I didn't realize that you had taken me at such a young age to church. For some reason, I thought I was a little older.
Isn't that funny? I think it's good to have conversations like this, and it just keeps everything fresh. You know, the Bible says that we should pass down from generation to generation, and tell the stories and have these opportunities to continue the conversation, which is another reason I think it's important that families stay connected. So anyway, I thought it was pretty cool.
And
so
folks,
go ahead.
And folks who are watching, feel free to ask questions or comment as we go along. We are able to see that, whether you're watching on, we're just on Facebook right now, but feel free to do that. We'll go ahead and start this conversation. Did you want to get us started, Tina, or should I?
I'm happy to. So as we shared last week, both of us ended up moving to Arizona. I went first with my family at the time and kind of got grounded a little bit there. Figured out some things about life, figured out a few things about the kind of life I wanted to live. And so I was in Arizona, I think, gosh, you didn't come down till when, 98, 99?
Well, actually, it would have been the summer of 97. I graduated in 1997, and I got the heck out as soon as possible. So
yeah, just like me. Imagine that.
Yes.
Anyway, so I had been in Arizona for about 10 years. Mm-hmm. So during that time, I had, as we talked about last week, 4 beautiful girls that I was raising. I went through a divorce during that time, and I was starting to get my bearings about who I wanted to be, what was important, how to take care of myself on my own, how to do all of these amazing things. And I ended up in a town called Levine. And it's so funny because I go over there now and it's so different. It's so built up. It wasn't built up at all when I was there. And I found this beautiful old house that was in bankruptcy that I was able to secure. 2-story, beautiful home for me and my girls. I think I was living with a gentleman at the time. Was Joe there when you came?
Yeah, Joe was there when I moved in.
Yeah. So I was living with a young man at the time, and trying to figure life out. And I was really far from being happy. It was a little bit crazy around there. Kids, work, new relationships. My first, my second home that I had purchased, but it was way too much home for us.
It was a lot. It was a huge home. I got to have like a master bedroom, which was fantastic. I mean, it was, and for it being in like South Phoenix, which is like still part of the city, it did kind of feel a little rural, like
it did. It was out of town. I actually worked at a bar down there. In South Phoenix off of 7th Avenue and Dobbins. And that was my income down there. So it was interesting. So I went from a Christian that was on fire for God. I moved with all this hope and excitement. And then I kind of got beat down a little bit. It's amazing how as people of faith, we still live life just like everybody else. And the choices that we make over time sometimes go back to the familiar versus what we're reading in what our Bible says.
Yeah.
So I always try to remember that when I'm dealing with people that are people of faith, to not put them in a different category as just people, because I remember thinking Christians should act this way or that way or the other way. But when I became a Christian, I realized how hard it was to act this way or that way or the other way. And I thought, oh my goodness, I've been holding people to a standard, thinking that they had this magical ability to no longer do the things that I thought they shouldn't do.
Right.
And then I realized that, yeah.
And did that kind of come from like for me, I don't like, did that come from a space of feeling like you were falling short as a Christian?
Well, it depended on which,
like,
depending on how I looked at it. So I found that for me, okay, so let me just back up just a tiny bit. You know, when we're new believers, the first thing we look to, and I know at least for me, was that all the things that we thought growing up and was taught or even experienced that Christian people are. And so when I first gave my life to Jesus, I stepped into a legalism of what Christians should be. I'm not allowed to cuss now. I'm not allowed to smoke. I'm not allowed to drink. I'm not allowed to, whatever those things. I had this whole list of don't do's. And so it was really challenging. So I was trying to not do all those things, because that was what we're supposed to do. And that's how I perceived Christianity, in addition to all the Christianese that I learned over time. So when I moved to Arizona with all this high hopes of stuff, I realized that, it wasn't that easy. One, I didn't have the ability to just not do these things that I had been doing, but I really had to question, okay, what is this really about? What is Christianity really about? It's not about being perfect. It's not about not to-do list. It was really about allowing myself to experience new things and to allow God to change me, which I was not ready to do. So it was easier for me to just not hang out with those folks. Although I went to church and I did all those things, but when I went through my divorce, I no longer did those things because Christians don't get divorced.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like,
that's the way we were raised.
The all or nothing. It's like, if I did one thing wrong, then, everything might as well be wrong. You know what I mean? Like, just, I don't know. For me, it's like one check and you're out, so to speak. Not really, but there's kind of that mentality. And it's interesting because I didn't, like when I moved out there and lived with you, you were really involved with church. Yes, you had just went through the divorce. You were super involved with like Bible studies and things like that. And so I saw you as like this Christian person, because that's all I ever knew you as, really. And then I did see you kind of going through some things, and I was kind of confused about how someone can be a Christian and then also have these sort of things going on in their life. But that also showed me that that's what can be happening, right? Like, it doesn't have to be that you're perfect and that you have it all together. Because when I got there, we went to a church together. We went to the River of Life Church, which was a humongous church compared to anything I'd ever been to before. There were 1,000 or so.
Oh,
maybe.
There was a lot.
Yeah, just in the congregation on Sunday.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah,
and that was just a place that I felt, and I have to be honest, it was a place I could be lost in the crowd. You know what I mean? There were so many people there that I really didn't have to be connected to anybody. So I could still have that baby experience that I had. I can still get the rah on Sunday with the music and the teaching that I enjoyed, but I didn't have the commitment level to be a part of engaging. You know what I mean? I didn't have any accountability, which is how we grow. I didn't have to do any of that. So being in that big mega church at the time was perfect for me, because me and the girls could come in and you could come in. We can do our little thing on Sunday. We could go out and then we can come back and do it again next week. So it was just really, it was different. I'm grateful for it, because I could have went totally off the edge the other way, but I think it kept me kind of grounded a little bit, so I didn't totally turn my back on my commitment to Jesus.
Yeah, and I got involved with that church a little. I think maybe I don't know if a little bit more, but my feeling was I got fairly involved because I started doing like theater. They did a lot of like big theater productions that sometimes had like
Yeah.
pyrotechnics and like all this sort of stuff. And like, I remember like wanting to do it because like back home, I was like, I was like the eldest in church. So I always got to play Jesus and Joseph and all like the star kind of roles. And then I got I got there and I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. And I remember getting cast as, I think it's just kind of a little ironic right now, but I got cast as like an ultra masculine person. Like I remember it was like a Tom Allen from, like Tim Allen or whatever from that Home Improvement show or whatever. But they were like wanted me to like grunt and be all like extra masculine, and I was so bad at it. Like I just felt I felt really uncomfortable about it, I think for one reason, but it was a really cool time to kind of like lean into a lot of discomfort. But you kind of like you said, I just church was always a place that I could go and like feel safe and like, I don't know, just a little bit more social and a little bit more like just comfortable in myself. And so that it challenged my comfort a little bit, but like in all the good ways. I was still really committed to being a Christian at that time of my life. And it just kind of helped me lean into some things a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, which kind of started then like leaning into like, for me, my sexuality started to come into play for me personally. I don't know that you were aware of it. But like, at least I didn't think anyone else was aware of it. I thought I was like coming to this understanding of my own sexuality. And I had an experience when I was 16 with a man. But like, because I was super involved in church at that time, I really felt, and it was such like this natural experience that just kind of happened. It felt very natural to me at the time. I almost felt it was like not natural. It was just this weird sort of like pull that I had when that happened, because I was not a very sexual young person. I know some people get sexual a little younger. I was not that person. I ended up like, it was like oral sex or whatever at 16. But I remember thinking like, oh, I don't know why that happened, or should that have happened? I remember telling one person that it was with a man, but I said it was with a girl. And like a cousin of mine, I told him that's what happened. But I really kind of kept it to myself, and then just kind of went to church more. Because I wasn't sure if it was a good thing or a bad thing, to be honest with you. And I think I was leaning more toward like, maybe this wasn't good. And so then when I got to and so I kind of didn't think about it again until I got to Arizona. And then when I got to Arizona and had some opportunities while I was going to tech school and stuff, that, I just had these desires and these curiosities about men that I hadn't really explored before. And I felt like I had an opportunity to kind of do that. And I remember like back at that time, I would meet guys on a phone chat line, like it's called like Megaphone or something like that. And, so I remember one time I met with one person who was the first person I was ever with. And I remember like meeting this person and then like getting all like I got a new outfit, and like I just got all ready to go over to his place, and he was like in Levine as well, just a little bit further. And so went over to his house, and I had like my first sexual experience, and it was a great experience, but also I was just really conflicted with what God thought about that, and kind of that it happened. And so I ended up going back to your place. I was living with you at that time, and I collected all those things from that night, the notes that I wrote, everything and all that. And I actually burnt it all because I just was so conflicted with what to do with that. I somewhere I had been told that wasn't right, that was wrong in some way. I don't even think I recall anyone ever telling me. Well, I mean, I heard a lot of people called faggots, and I heard a lot of like derogatory things said about gay people growing up, but I never really, I don't know. I just always knew it was bad, I guess. And so then that kind of went away, and I dated a girl, and I dropped out of tech school, went to Grand Canyon University, where I wanted to do Christian studies. I felt called to be a youth pastor and work with theater with young people. And I dated my first semester there. I was also dating a girl that I was working with at IHOP in Ahwatukee. I was the graveyard shift manager, and that was a fun experience for 18 and 19 years old.
Yeah.
And Stephanie ended up dumping me in like January of 90s, or I guess it would have been 99. Okay. And she dumped me because I wouldn't have sex with her. I just had no sexual desire to be with her in that way. We made out, and I loved her deeply, and she had been in kind of a not so great relationship that she kind of left to be with me. And so we had like a really great friendship, but it just wasn't there for me in that way. And when she left me, she was really hurt. And I felt horrible, because that was the last thing that I wanted to do, was be responsible for somebody's pain. And so that's when I decided. The next month I turned 20. And that's when I just came out to myself that I was gay. I didn't tell anyone that at the time. And I got a job at a gay bar to learn how to be gay. I guess. I mean, I didn't have any reference from it. So I started working at a gay bar. That was in February of 99. And then I told you, I mean, I got diagnosed in May, which is just like 3 months after,
later,
3 months from then. I was diagnosed with HIV, but I felt like I had told you that I was gay before I tested positive. Is that correct?
I think we had a conversation, but I'm not sure that I believed you because all I had referenced was that you had this long-term relationship with this girl, and that you were trying to figure out who you were. And I thought maybe you were just sad from the breakup. So I wasn't sure that I believed you at that time.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense, and I didn't, I definitely, like, when I told you, I remember you saying, well, it might be a phase. This was my recollection. It may just be a phase. Like, don't tell anyone yet. Like, wait to see what happens. And that devastated me, to be honest. Understanding like your point of view now, I'm like, well, that seems very, you know what I mean? Like to me, I took that as like, no, like you can't be gay. Like this isn't the, like, like in my mind, because I think I felt so conflicted about my spirituality and all of that. And like you were always my connection to like God and all that too. So a part of me, for whatever reason, I just heard you were like, don't tell anyone, like this will go away. Like it's not a thing. Like it's not okay. That was kind of how I took it. I had told you, and I had told your ex-husband, Daryl, at the time, and he was a little bit more he was more supportive. I guess he just didn't say that, but I also didn't have the same relationship with him that I had with you, especially when it came down to like spiritual matters or whatever. And
that's interesting, because in my perspective, I felt like I was protecting you, because if you had been hurt in this scenario, and I didn't want you to go all out in this direction and realize in a few months that wasn't the case at all, and then have to try to recover from just experiencing people, because we both grew up in a place where that was not a normal thing that people did. We were raised that just some of those things that you already said, I just can't even say it, was the norm, and that's how those people were. And we just didn't, because we didn't expect. I was never exposed really until I moved to Arizona, and so we did have this underlying, I hate to say programming, but it's based on our exposure. And so my thought in that time, after seeing all these progressions in your life, I'm like, oh my goodness, if he comes out and says that, and it's not true, because I was worried that maybe you were just hurt from a breakup, that if you go out and you say this, then all this stuff is going to come crashing in on you. And if you pull back at all, it's going to be really hard to overcome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's so amazing how, and man, and maybe it was even a little selfish on my part. I don't know, but I remember thinking I just need to make sure that Duane's okay.
Mm.
But yeah.
It's so wild because it's so different. Like, because we're talking a little bit about perspectives, because I totally just took it as judgment and like disappointment. And then and then I think it was topped off by the fact of then, I was still really active in church. And I really needed, like, church was something I always landed in whenever life got hard. And I remember, like, I had a moment, I think I was crying. I was like barefoot for some reason. And I remember going to the church. And I remember, though, deciding that I couldn't be there anymore because I wasn't able to say I was gay. And at this point, this was like right after my HIV diagnosis, which is why I felt I needed help with being HIV positive, not being gay, but it all happened so quickly. And then I was like, I can't tell them I'm gay. They're not going to accept it. I remember hearing things said from the pulpit about how a man should present themselves, even though we had very flamboyant guys who were involved in things. But I just remember thinking, this is not a space I can share this with. And I think with having that response from you too, I was just like, okay, church. And I remember just thinking, okay, God, I'm just going to put you on this shelf over here. Like, I know you got me. There was a part of me that always knew that God was there for me. But I did feel like I was wrong. I felt like, but it was also at this point where there was no turning back. I was HIV positive. I was going to have AIDS and I was going to die just because I didn't know a lot about it. It was a very scary, traumatic situation. And it was very counter to everything that I had planned, like I was going to be an architect, or I was at least going to take my family out of poverty. And it's like, nope, you're going to die. Like, you're going to die before you can do any of that. And I just felt like a fuck up. Like, I really, like you talked about earlier, like having these really high expectations for self. Part of that was created from my Christian thoughts and understanding at that time, but also it was a lot of just the expectations that I come to hold growing up. I mean, I think in a lot of ways too, I was put on a pedestal growing up, and I loved it. But I think that was starting to that time as it crumbled. And at that time, that's when I also I made the very conscious decision to start using drugs. At that time of my life too, because I couldn't.
Did you do that, you think, to help you find some peace?
I did it to soften the blow of life. I had really felt like I had fucked up and there was nothing I could change that. And I couldn't accept that. It hurt too much to think about all that all at once. I was just getting ready to move out to LA. Because I had quit Christian school just before I came out as being gay. And I was moving out to LA to do acting and modeling. It was right around that time that I was planning on moving when I got the diagnosis. And then basically I just said I didn't feel pretty anymore. And that's how much it really just kind of cut me. People used to say I had such poise and confidence and like beyond my years. I always looked really, really young. So people were always surprised by that. And then as soon as I got this diagnosis, it just crushed my soul. In a way that I didn't think I could ever recover from.
Wow. I'm sorry you went through all of that, Duane. I really had no idea because you disappeared in essence. And I didn't know how to pursue you. And quite honestly, I had so much garbage going on in my own life that I was struggling just to deal with myself and my girls and the responsibility that I had. So, you know what, when I hear all this, it just blesses me. I just have to tell you, not all your pain and your suffering, but that here we are.
Yeah.
All that stuff could not keep us from that connection point, that original connection point that I believe God gave us.
Yeah.
That God gave us. And, as I was listening to your story and and understanding your perspective, I could see how the enemy worked so hard to destroy the things that God put in us. Because I think, Duane, every dream that you had, every aspiration you had, every desire you had, I believe it's still available to you.
Yeah.
And
I feel like I've achieved it in a lot of ways too.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
I can look back now and like see my life, because I'd always felt like I was going to, like, it was like in little kid terms, but like I was going to save the world, and I was going to save the world for Jesus. Like it was going to be a big thing. Like, and like, like I can look at it now and be like, actually, like a big part of my life has been of being service to people. And I was working with young people initially a lot with HIV and AIDS. And, now I can say for me, it was a very spiritual, like a big part of my spirituality is like being able to, I guess, help people along. Like, I think I got enlightenment, not just for me to have enlightenment, but for me to bring people with me. And the way that I'm able to do that are by my I guess things that had once been seen as deficits or failures or disappointments or I don't know what you curses, however way you want to call it, but being on the other side of it, they're assets.
Yeah.
I am grateful. I'm so grateful that I had drugs and alcohol, because they gave me life and they gave me a way of living. Like I had joy and happiness in a time in my life that I desperately needed it more than I'd ever needed it in my life. And I was not able to do that on my own. And I was not able to access God, unfortunately, in the way that I had at that time in my life. So, drugs and alcohol became my they call it alcohol spirits, and I think it became that which lifted my body and lifted me and animated me in a way in which I could be in the world in hopefully a positive way, even amongst so much pain.
So do you feel like since you've become sober that's taken away from you then?
What's that?
Since you've been sober now, how does that, because I see you like that now.
Yeah,
Before,
no, and
I saw you as kind of lost.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think part of that too is, I mean, and maybe, I mean, I think we're also in more connection now, so we're like
That's true.
filling in those blanks. And in some ways, I was kind of lost. I needed to get lost from total reality, because reality was like too much. But I've been clean and sober now for it'll be 13 years in May.
That's
and
amazing.
like
Praise God.
Exactly. And drugs and alcohol no longer gave me life and gave me that joy and that happiness and allowed me to escape from things, nor was I living a life in which I needed to really escape anymore from some of those things, once I quit.
Yeah.
So I don't miss drugs and alcohol today, but I'm really grateful for the time that I did have access to them. I'm grateful that I never got put into prison. I never got, I never died. So many of us don't make it out of that. The only thing that, like I had to get over substance use. I fell short in my marriage. I fell short in relationships. I was sexually assaulted. That I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I was using substances at that time in my life. But other than that, but yeah, like I wouldn't change anything. I'm so grateful for, for the experience.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an amazing testimony. Do you mind if we go back just for a second? You talked about that, I call it a hiding place, that shame hiding place. I think that a lot of people experience that in a lot of different ways. You experienced it because you kind of went from a place where you thought where you were comfortable, then realized maybe that's not. You took on the condemnation of what you thought was happening. You found hope in drugs and alcohol for a season. And I wonder, I'm sure other people experience those types of, and I feel like that was a hiding place for you, a place where you could pull away, where you could be who you thought you were. You didn't care about what everyone else might be thinking. And I wonder if there's people, maybe not even people like me or like you, but maybe just people that are stuck in a space of shame or hurt that they're hiding, be it with drugs and alcohol, be it with whatever it might be, that they're not asking themselves the hard questions, that they're not going to people and asking if their perspective is valid.
Yeah.
When we would have family gatherings, the few times we were able to cross over a little bit in Idaho, our lives would kind of cross, because you and I didn't talk to one another. We didn't call one another. We didn't email one another, didn't send Christmas cards to one another. I don't know why. I never felt like you ever did anything to me. And I wasn't sure that I had done anything to you because I didn't know. But
I just felt like you weren't okay with me. So
yeah.
I kind of kept my distance. And whenever we were close, or like, because I would visit, and I would feel like sometimes I would just feel like uncomfortable. I wasn't sure if I was really welcome there. And, then I was married and I had a husband for a while. I remember taking a visit and visiting you, and there was like a Bible study that happened to be happening at the same time I was there. And there was a part of me that just always felt like you were willing to try to love me, but only with the idea that you could maybe change me back to being, I don't know, something more in line with what it meant to be a Christian. Just because at that point in my life too, I had no spirituality. I didn't feel like church was, it just wasn't an option, I guess, for me at that point in time. So I just felt like I was just not allowed. And I felt like you would only want me as if you could like save me. But I didn't need saved. And that was I didn't need to be saved. Yeah. I didn't need to be saved like in that way. Like my sexuality, I'm also grateful that I was, at the time identified as a gay man. I believed there was a time that I did feel like I felt like I was just wrong. And God could still love me anyway, because he understood why I was wrong. And that somehow I felt like I was created that way, and I could only live as a gay man and be happy and satisfied and experience love and those sorts of things. And in some ways I felt like God thought that was wrong, but he could have compassion for me anyway. I don't believe that now. That's not my theology. That's not my understanding. I believe that my queerness, my transness now is a gift from God. And the closer that I get with God, like the more those parts of myself just bust open and I can express them. I believe we're only as sick as our secrets. And that's just something I'm really grateful for, is that, a lot of the things that I do are not done in the dark anymore, because of God. To me, I believe God created everything, and God continues to create me in God's image. This is God's image, and as long as I can go out in the daylight, and I can like be open about who I am and what I'm doing in my life, then I know God is good with that. And I'm good too.
I think, Duane, as long as you continue to seek after God and all that he has for you, I think that he'll continue to guide you and transform you and reveal himself in you, just like for all of us.
Himself, herself, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I believe that. And I always never forget, none of us are free from sin. None of us. So for anyone to say that we've never done anything wrong, or we're walking in perfection, or that we're in perfectly God's grace. I mean, I guess we are in God's grace always, but I'm never going to be.
That's what grace is all about, right?
Yeah, that's what grace is all about. And I'm not perfect. So, I'm glad that you and I can sit and rebuild on the foundation that God gave us. And I'm glad that we can have conversations now, and we're not afraid to do that. Because I feel like if either one of us, and I'm just as guilty, because we would see each other at family gatherings, or even when you'd come for a visit, and we interacted, but it was always just cordial.
Yeah.
It wasn't loving. It was cordial. So I'm glad now that we are past all of that, and we can be loving to one another and understand one and have a conversation without fear of the other one going crazy, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of because there's still a lot of my family members that I have not talked with about who I am and what my life's been about. Especially in the way that I have with you. And I think for me, what I chose to do, for whatever reason, I didn't want to confirm that you or anyone else thought that horrible way about me. I think there was a part of me that just hoped that maybe that wouldn't be true, but I couldn't know the truth. It's like the person who gave me HIV. I only had one opportunity that I could have got infected, and I did. And I never talked with that individual about him giving me the virus. Again, because I felt like I couldn't handle that truth, that maybe this individual knew that he had HIV and didn't tell me, whatever the situation. I just never could have that situation. So I think a big part of my life, and still a big challenge for me, is to have some of those conversations with people. And one of the things that I'm learning is like, it's never as bad as I think it is in my head.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I still think a lot of people don't like me or don't support me. But it's just not true, because their actions and the things they invite me to, it's just not true. But for whatever reason, I still kind of have that, that's something I can give to God, and God can help me through.
That's exactly right.
And I feel like our relationship is really, I feel like you've intentionally made the decision to be in relationship with me in this way, to accept me as who I am in all the ways that I show up, and I the same with you. I wish that I want that for so many more people in my life. And I know that I'm the one who is not affording myself the freedom to be in relationship.
Restoration can only come as we lean on God and we pursue our relationships with our family. Like I said last week, I think it was purposeful that God put us in the family that He did. It was for and if you look about at all the amazing things that we had, you and I, a foundation laid in us, but we both responded different. So you came out of that relationship of our family as a young person with much more generosity than I did. Now, I was taught all that stuff because my mom taught your mom and your mom taught you, but I got so blinded with me and woe is me, and I want something better for myself, and I want something better for my kids, and that was about as far as I could go. And I didn't have that generosity for the people in the world around me. I had the foundation for it. But where you came out, and your very first steps from the moment you stepped out and into our home, and from all the time that I've known you, you've always been willing to serve the people around you at your own expense.
Yeah.
See, I didn't get that. That's what I was taught, but that's not what I got. So as I matured and as I've grown, God has reminded me of my foundation, of who and where He put me in life, the blessing it is of that, and how now the generosity of my life needs to be in all these areas. And it's like, that's what you're talking about, the generosity of your life, being open to people to have relationship with them. Because here's the thing, if we're not open to have the relationships that God set for us, we're not only robbing from the people that we're not having a relationship, we're robbing from ourselves. Yeah. Because those relationships should be working so that both of us can become better human beings.
Yeah. But part of the problem is that we're hurt and we stay hurt. To be honest with you, I feel like the only reason sometimes I have God in my life, or whatever I decide to call it that day, is because all you people are going to let me down and hurt me at some point. So at least God won't,
That's right. You're right. And I know that's just guaranteed. We're all going to hurt one another. Where none of us are perfect.
Yeah.
I will say that it's been very important, something that I did that's helped change the course of my life, and the people that I have around me that have known me over the last few years. I made a decision And it's a hard decision. And sometimes I have to be reminded that I made a decision. But I made a decision to never take offense. I just decided. And when I get offended, and I do, I hear myself say, nope, I decided I was not going to do that. And so when I stop, I sometimes will retract, and then I'll sit with God, and I'll say, okay, Lord, I do not want to be offended, because I know offense can bring about destruction. We've all lived a portion of that already.
Right.
And I will tell you that as God reminds me, and as I allow God to just do it and to walk in it, even though well, let me give you an example. And just because it's an example for me. Gosh, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, I've been thrown out of a lot of great churches, I might tell you, because of different things. Justifiably, probably, each one of those. So I don't have any issue with those people today. I did at the time, but I don't anymore. I finally got grounded in a place that I felt I was at, being in a church that was alive, a church that I was comfortable, a church that I could just be me. I didn't take on any responsibility because I was not ready for that. And it was weird. It was weird for me because I kind of felt outside of the norm because I wasn't engaging. I just wanted to be a part of the feel good stuff and, do all that. So, but I do, and you know me, I've got a strong personality sometimes. Yeah. And we were having a Bible study.
Yes.
It is one of my gifts.
It is.
But sometimes it can be perceived by people as obnoxiousness or arrogance or, whatever. So I was going to the Bible studies. I was having fun. I was talking about it. One of the things that I particularly love is I love to study the Word of God. And so I would try to add to the conversation, which I was told that was not appreciated. And I actually had someone that I really loved say to me, I don't think you should go to Bible study anymore. You're too intimidating to the other women.
Oh, wow.
I was crushed because I loved, this was my friend. I loved her. And I got offended right away. Right. I'm grateful. I said nothing. I said, oh, okay. I didn't think about that. And I left it at that. I went home. I was crying. Oh my gosh, I was crying. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get thrown out of another church because I had been thrown out of so many. And that was not my heart. But when I sat before the Lord and he said to me, remember, you decided that you were not going to be offended. So why are you being offended? And I was like, oh, because this is my outlet. This is what I like to do. This is what something I enjoy. And then the Holy Spirit reminded me that, well, you're having a conversation with me. Do you really need to be in a place where other people can be intimidated by you?
Right.
I'm like, oh, you're right. So I did not go back to Bible study. And I did not throw this person under the bus either when someone asked me why I hadn't been to Bible study.
Right.
I didn't tell them that I was asked not to come back. And I do have a relationship with this person still over time. And I never broke that relationship with her. I never had a conversation of how much she had offended me. But what God did through it all was he gave me an opportunity to, what I did was I took that same time that I was going to Bible study and I spent some time by myself reading the Bible, understanding who it was, praying. And I came out of there so much stronger than I would have ever been before. And so I'm grateful for that. It was not easy. It was not easy, but it was tough.
Yeah, I think for me, whenever I find myself offended as well, I feel like I have to look into myself because it's usually not personal. Like I want to take it personal and I want to be offended. But the truth of the matter is there are plenty of things that people will say about me and I'll be like, not offended. Why? Because I feel good about that part of my life. Now, if I'm offended about other parts, then for me, that's telling me in my soul, because I am sober, because I live a spiritual life, that is a way that my body tells me that there's some truth here. Like you're being shown something. And so for me, in order to not be offended by something, because I tend to get offended for the same thing over and over, just by different people. And so what I get to do like, you talked about that Bible, give to God, that sort of thing. What I get to do is kind of another way to do that is I get to investigate that. I get to do an inventory of like, why is it that I'm responding in this way? What is it about this particular situation? And usually I can unpack as like, it feeds into an insecurity about this, or, I did this one thing once that just was not cool. And I haven't been able to make amends for it. I haven't really acknowledged it. I've kept it in the dark. And this thing reminds me of that, or this, and sometimes people are just, I want to say not kind words, but sometimes people just aren't kind, and and it's okay to be hurt, and hurt in that way. You should be, probably. But as far as getting offended by things, I think that's something we do have control over, but it's not. And sometimes I do have to just remind myself, nope, you don't get offended by that no more.
Yeah. See, and I think for me also that was a key, just learning that I don't have to be offended by those things. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge, huge help to me.
Yeah. It's so hard not to take things personal, huh?
It is very hard not to take things personal, especially if there's someone that is trying to be hateful or mean. It's hard. I just have to remind myself, nope, that's not who I am, because I need to know who I am. Mm-hmm. And I know from what the Bible tells me who I am. And so I'm not going to believe any of that other stuff.
Right. Well, I mean, one of the things that is kind of coming to my mind here is just like, I think one of the things that we've maybe needed, like a tool that I have to be in relation with people who are different from me, usually comes down to language, right? Like it usually comes down to the words that we use that might be different in different social groups or different settings, whether it's a church, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a group, whether it's like whatever. To me, I believe a lot of this stuff is some of the same. And one of the things that's been helpful for me is to allow somebody to say the word that they use, like say God, for instance. Mm-hmm. God, sometimes I say God and I'm good with it. And it's sometimes maybe even your God, right? And other times it's just a word that I use, like just me saying God, I have my understanding of that. You have your understanding of that. And so does somebody else. And somebody else could call it, I don't know, anything else. And I could just say, okay, that's what I think God is. Or I would say, like, one of the things that came to mind was that you had said earlier. And I think that's the challenge that I think that we have to have, or that I'm really trying to do, is trying to be okay with people using different language and different words. But I think part of that is I have to know your heart. Like I know your heart, you know my heart. So I know that anything you say is not meant to be harmful or hurtful, that it's out of love, and like we're human, like all that sort of stuff like that. So I can feel like I could connect in those ways. And I think those sorts of things could be helpful in dealing with different people.
Absolutely.
In a number of different ways, whether it's with body language or how we show up in the rooms of places, one of the things I was curious about, just because it kind of came up, was you had used the word sin. And I was curious if you could, since we're talking about words and definition, what does the word sin mean to you?
Sin to me is anything that keeps us out of God's plan. So what could be sin for me could be different than you.
Yes.
Let's
say that's my understanding too, but I think that's a very I wasn't taught that. I wasn't taught that in Bible study, I don't think. Like I don't remember learning it
that the Bible lays out as sin, and the Bible talks about sin a lot. But if you look at the difference between the Old and the New Testament, I believe sin is sin, but I don't believe there's any degrees of sin. Because the Bible says all have sinned and come short. So it's just sin. It's not, this is worse sin, this is worse sin, this is better sin, it's just sin.
Right.
And it keeps you out of God's plan. So just like I could do something that I know that I'm not supposed to do, and that's sin. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's such a personal thing, and I think that's something you just have to be honest with yourself. You have to check in with yourself. Is that because it's not your sexual orientation, it's not your gender, it's not a lot of great things about you. It's really about your relationship with those things. So, like, exactly. I could have a relationship with my sexuality that is not healthy and does get in the way of my ability to connect with God or connect with myself, or however way I want to define it. And that can show up in a lot of different ways. It could be sex, it could be food, it could be drugs, it could be work, it could be whatever is kind of taking me away. But I think one of the things that I've come to know is some of those things actually can bring me closer to God too. And if I give them, like, if I share them with God, so to speak, invite God into the thing, rather than feeling like it needs to be separate, which is not, it's never the truth. That's just a delusion of what we tell ourselves in order to, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. Got a little lost.
It's all good. It's all good.
Hi, Danielle. I wanted to acknowledge Danielle. It's great to see you on here. Also, Asia, if you're still there, thank you for your comment. And Michael Boss as well. I've been trying, we're getting used to the comments. So I was trying to bounce them up there so people could see them, but wasn't sure. We're still learning how to interact with them, I guess.
Yeah. This is all new for us.
Definitely.
But we're also open to answer questions if you have any also, or again, make your comments. We'll share them. Yeah,
definitely. We're right at around like 45, 50 minutes. So I think we're pretty good at probably, wrapping up, unless somebody, there are 2 people that are watching us at the moment. If you have a question that you'd like to ask us, we could go ahead and answer that question for you now. And for folks who come across this feed later, the video later, whether you're listening to it on a podcast, which you can find us on any place you watch a podcast, you should be able to find Splintered Grace. And if you haven't, if we're not there yet, we'll be there very soon. You also can watch the videos on my Instagram at Sparkle Is As Sparkle Does, as well as we'll have them on YouTube as well at the Aqueer Chaplain page. It doesn't look like we have any questions that have come up. So is there anything else you wanted to share before we wrap up, Tina?
No, just that I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm very excited that after all this time that we get to do something together, even if it's just for the 2 of us to have this conversation. So I appreciate you including me in all this. So thank you.
For sure. Thank you for that question. Danielle did just send a question. She's asking, when do you start? I would like to listen from the beginning. So where our plan is at this point, we're going to go live every Monday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So our plan is to go every Monday. We'll be live on Facebook via our own private personal accounts through Aqueer Chaplain. I think we'll eventually be on YouTube and potentially LinkedIn as well. But we're planning on going live every Monday at 10:30 in the morning and for about 45 minutes to an hour. So thank you for that question, Danielle. And then there's another question or comment. Michelle says, do you want to read that? I haven't read it yet.
Yeah. Michelle Gates says, it's a timely talk on being offended for me. Something just happened at work and I learned a lot from your discussion. Love the dialogue between you 2. Super helpful. Oh, thank you so much. That's wonderful encouragement. And I'll be praying for your situation at work.
Thanks so much, Michelle. It's great to see you on here. I love you so much. All right. Well, do you want to take us out, Tina, or do you want me to do that?
Go right ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in today. And until next time, take care. Thanks so much again, Tina. Bye-bye, everyone.
Mwah.
Mwah.